what's going on in the West Asia, the new defense pact or military pact between Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey. Many people are arguing this is against Iran or this is against Israel. We would be, we are interested to know what is your take? What do you make of this new military pact between these countries?
Nima, no one else seems to understand what it means, so I'll chime in with my opinion. It seems the Saudis are really down and out. They need any friend they can enlist, including the Turks, who are notoriously unpredictable in terms of who they support on one day and who they support on the next day. So it looks to me most like a kind of structure that is set up to indicate that Saudis are still in the game. They have powerful allies, but I don't think it means much. It certainly won't mean much unless there's a military aspect to it. And I'm from Missouri. You have to show me that there's a military aspect to it before I think it's something really substantial. That doesn't help much, but I confess that it'll take some time for it to play out before I can really figure out whether I'm right in the speculation.
The other point, Ray, is the way that Donald Trump was talking about the Strait of Hormuz yesterday and said that the Strait of Hormuz is part of the United States and he's going to control the Strait of Hormuz when this war is ended. And this had some, I would say, huge repercussions inside Iran. And what do you make of what's going on right now between Iran and the United States? Is it getting more dangerous? Is it somehow escalating? Is de-escalating? Is somehow some sort of, you know, pause? What do you make of it?
In my view, Iran is proceeding at a measured pace. That said, they no longer wait to retaliate to this or that U.S. or Israeli attack. They have preempted some attacks. Witness what they've done to our air bases in Jordan. So the byword here is measured, deliberate, with a plan, with a strategic plan. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have Donald Trump, which is just the opposite. They had no plan. They were sucked into this by Netanyahu and his fancy briefer from Mossad. He didn't know what to do. And worst of all, and I wish I could laugh at that, I can't laugh at it anymore. I mean, the U.S. is going to make Hormuz part of U.S. territory. For him to say things like that, and for him to dwell for 15 minutes at a major press conference on what happened to the reflecting pool, and for him to be filing lawsuits to allow him to build an extension to the White House. I mean, the man is not well. He's not well emotionally or psychologically. He's also not well physically. There are lots of doctors that are looking at all his photos now saying, well, why did he go to the hospital before he really need to for the annual checkup? So bottom line for someone like the supreme leader or his main lieutenants, or for Russia or for China, is, for God's sake, since he is by definition unpredictable, don't confront him in a way that he might. I mean, he does have his fingers on the nuclear codes, right? I mean, and he does have a bunch of sycophant generals that might even say, oh, okay, if you say so. So that's why I think there's a high premium on how the Russians have been advancing in Ukraine, especially, but also vis-a-vis Iran. And my hope is that the Russians are tutoring the Iranian leaders to the degree they need any tutoring. Look, things are going fine. For God's sake, don't sink an aircraft carrier. We don't know what will happen if you sink. Please, just proceed. Don't matter the rhetoric. I mean, make fun of it if you will, but realize that behind that is a person who is not all well mentally or physically, and that could do irreparable harm not only to us but to the whole world. Be cautious. Keep keep proceeding as we do in Iran, Putin would say, not Iran, but Ukraine. Um, uh, Slow and steady wins the race, he might say, to quote an old aphorism.
Ray, here is one of the billboards that Benjamin Netanyahu is using in Israel. And basically, it's talking about all these together. This new supreme leader of Iran, together with Erdogan and the head of, is the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Naim Qassem, and Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York. It says, the billboard says they want Netanyahu to lose. Don't let them win. So basically, they're bringing all of these people together, which I don't know how you can put. I cannot put Erdogan together with the leader of Iran, then let alone Zohran Mamdani together with them. But this is the way that Israel sees the conflict. We have to understand, one way we understand the conflict, but we have to put ourselves in their shoes and the way they see the conflict. They see the enemy. The enemy is growing, Ray, as time goes by. Israel's enemies are just expanding and growing more powerful. And how I think the question for the United States is, how are they going to deal with this issue?
Well, that's the eternal question, isn't it? Is Netanyahu still in charge? Can he trap the U.S. into yet another war, or is his elan, his popularity, so to speak, in the United States to include with the president and the vice president waning? As for the Israelis, it doesn't seem as though they see this as propaganda. As you point out, this big billboard or whatever it is, they believe that stuff. The world is against them, okay? Ever since the 7th of October, a couple of years ago, the world is coming in against them. So again, we have a situation where they see peril, right? And if Iran uses its full capabilities to obliterate, pardon the word, Israel, or to try to, what concerns me then, of course, is that Netanyahu also has his fingers on the nuclear codes. And would I think he'd use them? Well, here's a guy that does genocide, forced starvation, assassinates other leaders hither and yon. You tell me, you persuade me that Netanyahu would, in extremis, say, "Oh well, we have these nukes, but I mean, nobody would like us if we used the nukes." I don't think. I think the chances are better than even that he would use them, whether or not he consulted with the hardliners in the U.S. or not. Usually, as you know, the Israelis prefer to ask for forgiveness after the fact rather than permission before the fact. So again, the need for caution here, the need for an absence of braggadocio, an absence of rubbing it in. The Iranians are winning. All they have to do is keep a measured pace. The more so, because the U.S. is running out of ammunition. Now, if that isn't the most disgraceful thing I, as a former military officer, can think of, I mean, before you go into a battle or a war, for God's sake, you sort of check your, what the British call the inventory. It's not invented, it's the inventory in my book. You see if you have enough weaponry. Now, people say, oh, well, Trump believed that Netanyahu said it was only going to be 3 days or 4 days. Well, was there no one there? Was there no one there to tell Trump, look, this is a lot of BS. Don't believe this guy. Well, they were there, but they're a bunch of sycophants, and they didn't say anything that particular day in the White House Situation Room. They waited till the next day when the U.S. Times reporter asked them, well, what do you think of this? And they said, well, we have our doubts of it. We don't think we oppose it. I mean, give me a break. All right. These guys are, well, I'll say no more. Trump has been incredibly ill-advised, and I think it's a combination of dummheit, of stupidity, and the deep state that sees this war as a good thing, wants all wars to continue, not only to profiteer on making weapons and selling them, but also control what they have left to control in the world as well as in the United States. Years ago, actually during Iraq, it became clear to me that there was a deep state. And I talked to my former colleagues at the CIA. This goes back to the 90s, okay? And their eyes would glaze over. These are the analysts, okay? These are not the deep staters. And say, right, Ray, right, there's a deep state, Ray, okay. Conspiracy theorists. Well, there's lots of indications now that Trump is not completely in charge. Now, I worry about that, but I'm not Putin. I'm not Xi. I'm not the supreme leader. I'm sure, I hope that they are equally worried or much more worried than I. And that's why I applaud this gradualist approach. Don't hit a NATO base, for God's sake. Who knows? Would Latvia or Estonia invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter? Would they say, oh, attack on one is attack on all? Do they attack us? So U.S. come in? I mean, I'm sure that Putin has asked his advisors, what do you think the chances are that Trump would rise to that occasion, rise to that bait and get involved, maybe with nukes? And I'm sure the answer is Vladimir Vladimirovich. Come on, that's chances are only about 10%. Vladimir Vladimirovich, that's too high. 15%, 10%. Why would we want to risk that? Well, we've won. We're winning in Ukraine when Iran has got this pretty much in hand in Iran and the Gulf, where it's intimidated the Gulfies. I mean, so you want me to take a 10% chance that what the psychological Vladimir over there, you're the head of the psychological branch. What do you think, Putin? What do you think Trump would do if we struck a big arms manufacturing base, let's say in Germany? Huh? Okay, you hear that, folks? He can't predict.
Yeah.
So 15% is too high. That's how I see. I guess I've said that before, but at least there's something to be said for consistency. Now, would I rule out the use of an Oreshnik? No, not now. Not now that they're attacking sunbathers and others deep side in Russia. It's not going to change the progress of the war. Putin, every time he addresses that, he says, this is the main thing, okay? Yeah, they're pinpricks. They're really a terrible problem for us right now, but it's not going to affect the progress of the war. And that's true, of course. Now, does that exclude the possibility that he will say, well, all right, this one went a little too far. We're going to teach them a lesson. We'll throw an Oreshnik at them. We know exactly what it can do. There'll be no radiation. We'll get deep down into this tunnel because we know we've done it 3 times now. And the last time we created such a crater that we sent our own drones down there to measure the distance and measure how far the granite went down there. And so we know exactly what will happen, and we know exactly where these things, 6 of them or 9 of them, will land. So, yeah, we'll do one of those things just to show that we can do that. But we're not going to do it against NATO, a NATO member. We're going to do it against Kiev, maybe Kharkov, one of these main places, which would be a demonstration that would sort of appease the hardliners in Moscow and show that we're in this game and the war is between Ukraine and its European supporters and us. I'll say one more thing. There's actually Putin's presidential spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, put it in these terms. He said there's a dualism in the U.S. approach to Ukraine. On the one hand, they sell weapons to the Europeans to give to the Ukrainians, they also provide the intelligence, the sophisticated guidance mechanisms to let those missiles and drones go 900 miles into Russia or even the Caspian Sea now. So, on the other hand, they profess a willingness to help us get out of this. We believe that's genuine, but it's really hard for us to put the two together. So I call that dualism. Now, why the dualism? I think you have to go back to the deep state. And I could talk a little bit more about that because I've done some thinking about that lately. And, well, there are a lot. It's hard to define the deep state, but by their actions you shall know them. Okay. And if you could see what's been going on recently, as recently or as far back as December of last year, right up to the front, you could cite examples that can easily be attributed to the deep state, such as it is, which wants the war, which wants the profiteers to succeed, which wants the intelligence apparatus to grow and be able to dominate not only external affairs, but internal affairs. I mean, there are lots of things that you could see by their works, you shall know them. I think we're getting to know the deep state a little bit better.
Ray, when we talk, I think your point is so important because instead of focusing on Joe Biden or Donald Trump, we would be better off talking about the deep state, which doesn't change. It's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's something beyond these two parties. They're controlling the power. Do you think in their eyes they see the war against Russia in Ukraine and the war in the West Asia the same way? How do they feel about these two wars? Are they going to come together? And how long do they want to continue these wars?
Well, they blithely discount any prospect that there could be a nuclear use of nuclear weapons. They live in their own world. They're used to controlling things. Now, here's an example. About 3 weeks ago, there was an Iranian missile or drone, I forget which flew 1,200 kilometers. I think that's about 850 miles, okay, and hit a Caspian Sea city and port there in Iran, okay? Now, that was unprecedented.
You mean Ukrainian drone?
Yeah, Ukraine had some, sorry.
Ukrainian drone,
Yeah,
exactly.
Ukrainian drone. So, number one, it couldn't do that without the kind of guidance system and maybe Skylink and everything else that permitted that. Does it square with Trump's professed interest or the professed interest of the establishment, such as it is, to work out something with Ukraine? No, it doesn't. Um, who gave the Ukrainians the idea to do this? Okay, this was a real escalation. Now, it seems to me quite possible that Trump was never told about this, that the deep state kind of had the mechanism to say, why don't you try this, Ukraine? This might be kind of fun, go against a Ukrainian drone against was it a drone or a missile? I think it was a drone. Do you recall?
Yeah, it was a
Yes.
drone.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So it hit the port there in the Caspian Sea. Now, okay, Caspian. It wasn't far from the mouth of the Volga River, for God's sake. This is an escalation. So what happened? Well, next thing you know, the Russians hit real hard on the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians apologized. So we're not going to do this anymore, or cross our heart, hope to die with. So what I'm saying here is the establishment came in with both feet. I think it was maybe Lavrov that read them the riot act. Okay, said, look, you better knock that off. And then next day, Zelensky apologizes to Iran and says we're not going to do it anymore. So, well, this can't be dismissed as an insignificant a fact. Why did that happen? Why in late December, while Trump was on the phone with Putin, did somebody decide it would be a good idea to send 100 or so drones to hit where Putin may have been in his little house there in in his residence there near Valladolid? What was that really a known deception by our president? The story goes that he said, "Oh no, Vladimir, can you hold on for a second? I have to go to the bathroom or something. Just hold on." And then, boom, these drones come in. Okay, now he wasn't there. I think that's a good thing he wasn't there. But would that foster some distrust among the Russians? We're talking to the president. Either he knew about this or he didn't. We think he didn't. I think he didn't. And what does that mean for whether the president is in charge? I'll give you one more example. When I come from the Bronx here in New York, we use for instances. Okay, I'll give you a for instance. About 10 days ago, there's a very important congressional hearing, oversight hearing on coronavirus 19. Okay. And it's very clear that the CIA whistleblower, who's coming clean with the fact that Dr. Fauci and the establishment, personified by the National Intelligence Director at the time, Avril Haines, covered up the fact that that virus escaped from a laboratory funded and with gain of function research funded and authorized, established by Fauci. Okay. Now, what happened? Well, the head of the director of national intelligence was enlisted to cover the whole thing up and say, "Oh, Mr. Congress, you put me in charge of investigating all this. Why not somebody from the health aspect of our country? But why would you pick the intelligence director?" Well, because she's a really slimy lawyer. She's shown that by when John Brennan decided that the Senate may have too much information on the torture techniques that he authorized and oversaw. Okay, what do? He had his people hack into the Senate computer, see what they had. Right? I mean, talk about separate branches of government. Well, he had a deputy at that point. Her name was Avril Haines, really slick lawyer. He bragged about how great she was, but then he released her to the National Security Council, where she could do lawyerly things, no longer under the CIA. Oh, and then she was appointed to investigate these hackers from the CIA that hacked into the Senate Intelligence Committee computers. And guess what? Oh, it's just a big mistake. Nobody's held accountable. It's too bad, but that happened. So she's the cover-up artist par excellence. Why not give her the idea? Why don't you give her the mandate to investigate COVID-19? Finally, the Congress in 2023 said, "Look, we don't want to hear all this gobbledygook. You, Avril Haines, do a memo and tell us what the intelligence committee really thinks about all this and what the scientists think." And she came up with this mealy mouse thing saying, "Well, you asked us to decide between whether it's likely that it came out of a laboratory where Fauci funded this research or whether it came from an animal. Sorry, we can't figure it out." The people that work for me in the National Intelligence Council and 4 other intelligence agencies think it come from an animal and not Fauci's lab. Department of Energy, FBI, they think for sure it came from the lab leak. The CIA says it's just too hard to figure out. And now we know from that whistleblower that was 5-1 on the CIA, saying, of course, it came from a lab leak. Okay, so her report to Congress, she was given 90 days to do it, says, "Sorry, U.S. has to figure out the origin of COVID-19. We can't do it. The CIA can't figure it out. And just my people in the National Intelligence Council and four other unnamed agencies agree about an animal as for what could those agencies be? I'm guessing, since the intelligence community amounts to 18 now, I think probably one of them was the Coast Guard, maybe the Treasury Department or the State Department, maybe the uh, military air department. Now, I mean, hello, with no expertise in this kind of thing at all, but willing to be numbered among the elect, so to speak, unnamed. So the whole, to say that this woman, Avril Haines, is corrupt is like saying that the Titanic got a little damp. Huh?